So whenever we're connecting the devices, we either connect them with cables or we sometimes even connect them wirelessly. Now, if you remember, when you connect to your Wi-Fi, this is wireless, right? So that is it. That is also a medium. But for those of you who use broadband connection, you guys use cables, right? So those are also medium. All right, so medias are basically all these cables that you see over here. This cable is a media, or if you are connected wirelessly, then you would be using a wireless media. So this mm, media is basically just what provides the connectivity. Okay, so if you're talking about wired mediums, I'm sure all of you guys have used LAN cable or Ethernet cable. For those of you who use broadband, you use the Ethernet cable at the back of your CPU. Um, Even in labs, if you guys have ever looked at our CPUs, you will see that there at the back there is this blinking lights, yellow blinking light where the um, cable goes, and if you kind of take it out, then you no longer have internet connection. So that is the twisted pair cable, Ethernet cable. Then you have optical fiber cables, coaxial cables. So these are different types of cables that are used to connect devices. Okay, but then you also have wireless media where you don't really use cables. Right, so then another element of data communication was messages, right? The messages that you're going to be sending. Now, in modern world, information comes in different forms. You have text, you have images, you have sound, but all of these are basically converted to binary sequence. You guys already know this because computers, they deal with binary values, and so mm, data, before sending them, you do some sort of conversion, right? But data comes in many forms. You have text, pictures, videos, sound, so on. All right, and the most important thing is rules, because without rules, you don't really have a proper communication. If there are no rules, communication may never as well happen, right? So rules kind of tell you what you should be communicating, how you communicate it, and when it is communicated, and so on, okay? Now, once again, this picture gives you a pictorial representation of um, the whole communication spectrum. You have a sender, you have a receiver. The sender is going to be sending a message to the receiver by some medium, and of course, the communication is going to be following some rules or protocols. All right, so once you have all the elements noted, the whole idea or definition of data communication becomes very simple. So data communication is just what is communication ultimately? You exchange information, right? So data communication is the exchange of information, and in this information is going to be exchanged from the sender to the receiver. So one entity is going to be sending and another entity is going to be receiving, right? So you're going to be exchanging information between entities, and some medium or something is going to be used to actually send this information. So that is basically what data communication in its simplest terms is. All right, so now we're going to be talking about that when you have devices connected, depending upon how they're sending the data, you have three different modes of data flow, okay? So you have simplex, you have half duplex, and you have full duplex. Right, so once again, this is based upon how exactly the data is being sent. So let's first talk about what simplex is. Now, suppose you have two computers connected, okay, and the nature of data flow is such that one computer is always sending data and the other computer is always receiving data. All right, so data flow is unidirectional. It only flows in one direction. Okay, so when data flows like this, we call it simplex flow of data. So an example of simplex is radio communication, right? So when you're listening to the radio, you don't really give any input. The radio just receive signals, the radio gives you one-way information, right? You just can only listen to the radio. So that is an example of simplex. Another example is when you're using a keyboard. All right, so basically you're just typing and your computer is just parsing everything that you're typing, right? So you're just giving order to your computer. You're not really, it's not vice versa. So when the flow of data is in one direction, you call it simplex. All right, so radio communication, when you're using a television or keyboard, mouse, these are basically simplex flow of data. So the next thing we're going to be looking at is half duplex. So half duplex is the direction of data flow is both ways. Okay, so if you have two computers or two stations, um, both of these can send data to one another. It isn't like only one device is always sending and the other device is always receiving. Both of these devices can act as a sender and a receiver, but not simultaneously, not at the same time. So when device 1 is sending, device 2 will be receiving. And when device 2 is sending, device 1 will be receiving. Okay, they can't send and receive simultaneously. An example of this is walkie-talkie. Okay, so let's say you and your friend, both of you guys are communicating using a walkie-talkie. Okay, so you say something to your friend, and when you're saying something, your friend can't hear you. Your friend can't tell you anything. Sorry, your friend can't really tell you anything in return. When you're done saying what you want to say to your friend, and then you say over, and then your friend starts to talk. And when your friend is talking, you cannot talk, right? So when one station is transmitting, the other one cannot transmit, okay? And when the other one is transmitting, the first one cannot transmit, all right? So you have to wait. Both of them cannot work simultaneously. So that is half duplex mode of data flow. Now, what is full duplex? Full duplex is when two different devices are simultaneously sending data to one another. They do not have to wait for the first person to finish. So when you're talking over the phone, both of you can talk simultaneously. It isn't like you have to wait for your friend to stop talking for you to talk. But it's better if both of you guys are talking, then obviously you can't understand each other. But the thing is that um, the data is flowing in both the directions simultaneously. Okay, so even when we are basically, let's say you're doing a video call, right? So you're basically sending and receiving data at the same time. So when that happens, it's called full duplex. All right, so we have looked at three different ways of data flow: simplex, half duplex, and full duplex. Now let's look at some different network types. And these network types are based on the area of coverage of the network. Okay, so you have PAN, LAN, MAN, and WAN. So PAN stands for Personal Area Networks. Now, this is a network that has a very limited operating space. Like, let's say your personal working space will be the area for this type of a network. A very basic example of PAN is Bluetooth connectivity. So when you're using Bluetooth, now it doesn't have a really long range. You can connect to uh, your Bluetooth from the next room perhaps, but not from the next door even, right? So Bluetooth doesn't really have a very long range, right? And then you have LANs. Now LANs are a little bit bigger than PANs in the sense that they cover more area. Typically, the area for LANs are 50 to 30 meters. Now, a very popular LAN that we are all familiar with is TSR that we use when we are at campus. Now, if you think about it, like we can access that from each of our university buildings, right? So this area is kind of, the jurisdiction is kind of all over the buildings that we have, right, our campus. All right, so then you have um, metropolitan area network, or MAN. Now this is kind of a network that is even bigger than LAN, and it covers almost up to 50 kilometers. And it's more like a citywide network. A popular example is like Bangla and WiMAX. Okay, and then you have wide area networks. Now, wide area network spans even larger geographical area, right? So it won't be limited to a country, a city. It's much, much bigger than that. So it's consisted of multiple different countries. Now, the most popular example of wide area network is internet, right? So internet is everywhere. It spans almost all over the world. So that would be a wide area network. Some other types of wide area networks are cellular networks, which uses GSM technology or LTE technology. So that was basically it for this video. We talked about some elements of data communication, then we looked at how data flow across networks, and then we looked at some of the different network types. So thank you so much for watching. So see you guys around.